and repeat the questions so that we have that. All right. So with that, we're going to have Tina introduce.
Thank you so much for everyone coming out. I think this is going to help us a great deal, as well as all of our clients, which of course we care so much about. So this is Ted Corrigan, the CEO and General Manager of Des Moines Waterworks, and Melissa Walker, the Outreach and Communications Director, and Ryan Torgerson, which a lot of us deal with every day, from Torgerson Excavating. He's the owner, and his family has been in business nearly 40 years. So, and he's a master plumber. Oh, you guys get started?
I got a mic here.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So I think I'm
Sorry
gonna
about
do that. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to share some information today about that service line specifically here in Des Moines. Just a little background to start. Lead pipe was routinely used for water service lines across the country, starting in the early 1800s and all the way up through the early 1900s. We've been here in Des Moines all the way through about 1940. When water service lines were installed, they were routinely lead, at least to the stop box, and then going on to off galvanized, sometimes lead. But that's pretty commonplace. We believe that here in Des Moines, we still have 20,000 lead service lines in service being used by property owners every single day. So one thing that I think is important to note is that ownership of the service line varies from community to community. In Des Moines, the property owner owns the water service line all the way from the water main out in the street, all the way from that main, tap on the main, all the way to the house. They own the whole thing. That's just the way it was set up in the beginning. That's pretty typical for large cities, pretty typical for cities in the metro. Everyone in the metro in Des Moines is going to be that way, every community except Ankeny and Waukee. In Ankeny and Waukee, the utility or the city is from the water main to the stop box. The stop box is that valve, it's that sidewalk, typically near the sidewalk. The water utility owns that, or the city owns that, and then the property owner owns the rest of the way. So kind of got to be careful where you are. It ends a little bit. But in Des Moines, where most of the lead service lines are, customer owns that entire water service line. That's an important point for all. So the EPA has issued a couple of rules related to
Okay. It's not happy.
Well, it doesn't matter. It's just going to say stuff
There
like
you
EPA. The EPA has issued two rules related to lead service lines here fairly recently. The rule that they issued in 2021 was kind of broad scope, pretty general stuff. But two things that it did require every water utility in the nation to do. One, we had to do an inventory of our water service lines, every water service line in the community, and determine what the material was. And then number two, we had to notify every property owner we believe had a lead service line. We also had to notify them if we didn't know what their service line was. So the service line that was assigned on. The lead lines and unknown lines, we had to notify the property owner by the middle of November of 2020. We do not have good records on what the water service line materials are in Des Moines because we don't own them. We never owned them, so we didn't track that. So we've been doing a lot of work to try to figure out, but the bottom line is, when we got to November of 2024, there were still a lot of them we did not know what they were. We literally sent out 50,000 letters to our customers telling them we do not know what your service line is made of. We're going to keep working on that. We learned through the type of work that Torgerson does when we do service line repairs, service line replacements. We learn We're out doing our own potholing. We're going to dig up the stop box, look at it, see what it is. We've asked our customers to submit surveys, online surveys with a picture of the service entrance where it comes into the house. We're continuing to refine that inventory, but today we have about 10,000 services that we know are lead, about 40,000 we still don't know what they are. We're still working on that. And that was all part of this 2021 rule. Okay, so we are currently in compliance with that rule. We've done our inventory. We've notified our customers. If we know they have a lead line, they know they have lead. And if we don't know what their material is, they know that we don't know. That's what we're doing.
Do you know if they don't have it?
If they don't have lead?
Yeah.
Yes, we do know some. Like, for instance, if the service line was connected to our system after 1986, we know it's not lead because lead is not allowed. We think that if it was connected after 1950, it's not. That's what we see from our institutional knowledge and actually digging in the field. But EPA doesn't let us base the letters on what we think. So we're still doing a lot of digging and confirming, and we hired a company called Blue Conduit Statistical Analysis that the EPA trusts. So we're hoping in another year we'll be to the point where we have more like 90% certainty. But the key for our discussion today is you only have a lead line if you got a letter from us that says you have a lead line. If you didn't get a letter, then we don't know.
But many people who have received
Hold on.
letters, many people who have received letters have replaced it, but it's hard to find the documents. And so on one we recently did, thank goodness that the seller had knowledge, had a friend actually who had knowledge, who had pictures that it had been done. And then we found out that Torgerson had done it.
Right.
It just wasn't documented anywhere. And so the other thing is you can look at the water meter from the inside, but there's no way to know what's in between the stop box and the water meter. My understanding from Ryan is that you could take up the stop box for the tune of about $1,600. And if it matches, the stop box matches what's at the water meter, then you can guess that it's probably the same.
Right.
Is it correct that there is not anything that you can take outside like they do for a sewer line, for instance, and hold it above there and it will tell us what the material is? Is that correct?
Well, I'm not aware of anything that.
I've researched so much on this, but I can't find anything.
We can help with that
Mhm.
because we were talking earlier about when lead was used in Des Moines. If it's before 1940, we know when the connection was made for that property to our system. We know the date.
Okay.
And we have very accurate information about the date. If the connection was made before 1940 for a residential property, there's a very high likelihood that it's lead. The original connection was still there. If the connection was made after 1950, there's a pretty high likelihood that it's copper. In the 40s, it's less. We're less certain. We're working on that, but we've got to get EPA to accept that. Okay.
Right.
We believe that we're going to be able to help the vast majority of property owners determine whether they still have lead or not. You can look where it comes in the house. There's galvanized pipe coming in. Probably still have lead out of the street. There's copper pipe coming in. Well, then we need to look at the tap date, connection date. We feel like we're going to be in a pretty good position to help the homeowner, but as it stands right now, they only know if they got a letter from us saying.
Can we be helping? Sorry. For example, we have several neighbors that are older. They can't get down to the basement. As realtors, I'm hoping that this would be a point where we could contact some of our clients and ask them if they need help to take the photos that you need, because my understanding is that you have a lot that have not responded.
Yeah, is that correct?
Most people.
Maybe
have
we
not
can help with that. Yes,
And I won't tell you how many of those surveys I've personally done for the, my mother-in-law who's not
Right.
getting birthday was yesterday. All of her neighbors, they all know I work for Waterworks, right? You don't have to, but yes, it would help us a lot if we could get that survey data. And it's got to take the photo inside the app. It's kind of confusing, I get it, but it takes like 3 minutes if you've done one before. And it is very helpful. And that's going to help us build a database. That's going to help us prove the EPA that what we think we know, we do know. That's going to help us identify where the service lines are. So that would be very helpful.
and not just elderly, disabled as well. Veterans,
Anyone.
disabled, elderly.
People who are not technologically savvy, they don't have to be elderly or disabled.
Right, right. Anyone that may need your help.
Yeah.
It would be great when you newsletter put out that you may be able to
Right
help.
here.
What do you mean you have to take the picture inside of the app? I'm just coming through. It's pretty easy. Yeah, that would be very helpful. And then that will help us learn what they have. Hopefully we will respond to them. But I want this group to know that as we do this work, we're going to get to the point where we have a pretty good idea of who has a lead line and who doesn't. We're going to get there. We're not there yet, but we're working on it and we're going to. Now, the new rule, the 2024 rule, the lead and copper rule improvements, goes a lot farther than the previous rule did. This is the rule that requires every water utility in the country to facilitate replacement of all lead service lines by 2037. So they have come to us and said, look, you have lead service lines in your community, you need to facilitate all those being replaced. We have 20,000 of them. It's a $200 million proposition in the city of Des Moines. And they gave us like $10 to cover the cost of all this work. So we're struggling with that a little bit. In all seriousness, we did a pilot project last year that it's on here somewhere. We'll look at that. We have applied for funding. We got $12 million for this year. We've got $14 million we applied for 2026. All that funding is now up in the air. We don't know if we're going to get any of it. We don't know if there's going to be any more. The total amount of funding that they have said was going to be made available is about 20% of what is needed to replace all lead service lines in the country. There's a huge funding gap there. Also, the funding is being delivered through the state revolving fund as partially forgivable loans. So we borrowed $12 million to replace lead service lines. They forgive half and we have to pay half back, which impacts our water bills. So we're not even sure we want to borrow $100 million, $200 million if we have to pay $100 million of that. That's going to be a big hit to our water bills. Currently, the funding available can only be used in qualifying census tracts. And the DNR went through a process of qualifying every census tract in the state of Iowa. And I don't know the details, but it's based on median income and value of home and things like that. It's smaller homes, older neighborhoods. We were working in Riverbend and Irving last year. Those tracts were eligible, but about half of the census tracts in Des Moines are not even eligible for the funding, even if there wasn't a funding, because they're only allowing it to be used in certain qualifying census tracts. So probably half of those 20,000 service lines are in neighborhoods where there isn't any funding. Unless we raise rates 30% for 20 years on every customer in the city, we don't currently plan to do that. Okay? Which means that some of those replacements are going to have to be self-funded, meaning the property owner is going to have to pay to replace that service. Where's my slides on? Pilot project. Melissa, you can tell I did not put this together. Melissa did it for me. She did a great job on everything exactly in the right order. We did a pilot project last year. We were trying to replace 100 service lines. We got 87 replaced. And we discovered that it costs about $10,000 to replace a service line all the way from the water main into the house, about $10,000 on average. We also discovered that about half of them, almost exactly half, had already been replaced from the stop box into the house. That's because that pipe is galvanized and it leaks. And so they're 100 years old, they're starting to leak, they've reached the useful life, they're at the end of their useful life. So about half of them have already been replaced. Replacing from the street to the stop box was about $5,000. 5 or 6, a little more than half, exactly, the street, the street. So we're working on figuring out how we're going to prosecute this project. How we're going to get 20,000 lead service lines replaced by 2037 when we have about 25% of the money that we need for federal funds. We don't have it all figured out yet, other than got one loan, we applied for a second loan. We're waiting to see if there's going to be any more funding. But regardless of whether there is, we're under mandate to get all the service lines replaced by 2027.
Is the 2 years a grace period? Because I thought it was 10 years. So it's 2 years a grace period?
Yeah, the question is it 10 years, 12 years, and it's 10 years, but it doesn't start until 2027. So they're giving us a couple of years to finish our inventories, convince EPA to take, our institutional knowledge. We have to start no later than 2025 or 2027. We're going to start this year, hopefully. We're going to try to replace 500 this year with that $12 million. Yeah.
I was just going to say, if you don't get cooperation. So is the point of like the data analysis that you're doing on things to be able to say that even if you have people who aren't cooperating and taking the pics and putting them in, are you guys going to be able to go through and pretty much mandate, you know, there's 99% certainty that you have lead and now it's required?
Yeah, we're gonna keep studying it. The pictures help. The potholing that we do with Torgerson, they actually dug up hundreds of them. That helps. Our institutional knowledge helps. We're going to keep working on it. Those are all just tools to help us get to the point where we're 95% certain. And we have to get to a certain level of certainty for EPA to be happy. And we'll keep working on it until we get there, one way or the other. And then when we do get there, it's up to us to figure out how we get people to comply. We had to communicate with over 300 property owners to get 87 of them who were willing to let us do it for free. We had to communicate with 300 property owners to get 87 let us do it for free. So there's a real challenge here. People, they don't want you in their house. They don't want to take a day off. It's inconvenient. They don't leave it. True. There are a lot of challenges with how are we going to get this done, okay? But one of the big challenges for us is that most people don't even know they have a lead service. And if they are buying a house, they certainly don't know that that house has a lead service. Well, we're kind of taking care of the part that they don't know because we're sending them a letter and we're telling them you have a lead service. You have a lead service. And now that they know, we think it's important that that be shared with someone who's going to buy the house. And I would assume that if you were working with a buyer, you would want to make sure that they knew that they were buying a house that had a lead service. Because there's a chance that they're going to have to replace that service line within the next 10 years and it could cost $10,000. And I say there's a chance because right now, today, as I stand here, I can't compel anyone to replace their service. Can't make them do it. The EPA has just said we are responsible for making sure it happens. They haven't told us how to do that. But it could look like we could pass a rule that says we will not serve your property through a lead service line. So if you have a lead service line, we won't serve. Our rules don't say that today. I think that would be a good step, but we're really compelled to do it. There's no penalty clause in the current rule, the 2024 rule. It just says we have to do it. It doesn't say what will happen to us as a utility if we don't. But if everybody just ignores it, penalty clauses will come. Normally that looks like the EPA will come and say, hey, you're not following the rules, and if you don't start following the rules, we're going to start finding you. That doesn't work, then we're going to take your license away and you won't be able to be off the water operator. That doesn't work, then we're going to send us go to jail like that. They have a
Did you
lot.
raise our rates 30%?
That is not currently the plan. I think we'll be going down more down a path of saying, hey, we can't serve you if you have a lead service line. They're going to put you in jail. That's 12 years from now. You know, we've got a lot of time to figure this out. Every community in the country that has lead service lines is trying to figure this out. There are a lot of unknowns, and I apologize for that, but I just simply don't know.
Sorry to ask so many questions there, but I had talked to several people who had suggested that, let's say that time comes and someone cannot afford it. There's no grant out there, they just can't afford it. My understanding is that the possibility may be that it's added onto their taxes, that that's how they would handle it. Can you see that happening? I know you guys are lobbying as well for disclosure, but.
Yeah, we're lobbying for disclosure. We're lobbying for funding at the state level. We're lobbying for all kinds of things at the federal level, including them extending the timeline, including them making more funding available. There's still time for this to develop. Anything is possible, though. I mean, it could be a case of we pay to replace the lead service line, and then we put a lien on their property. But I'm not sure that's better or worse than disclosure. But we still got to come up with the money somehow. Yeah.
Questions at the, but, you're talking about, the EPA is only talking about lead in the stop box. What about your infrastructure, gas, water to all these houses? You have lead in plants.
No.
You don't have any.
You know, lead was used decades ago to make the joints on cast iron pipe, but there was always a backer rod that they pounded into the joint first. They would fill that joint with oakum, and then they would seal the joint with lead. So there's no lead in contact with the water in our system. So when the water gets to their service line, it's lead free. Had no contact.
So you're lobbying for disclosure?
Yes.
Like that.
Well, we've had, that's why we're here today, to share with you that we have introduced legislation in the Iowa House and Senate this year to add known lead service lines to the disclosure requirements at time of sale. So
And something that'll happen like in the next 5 years.
I'm hoping it happens in the next 5 months.
Material adverse fact, I think right now, since they know the people you sent the letters to.
Yeah, our perspective is we have to tell them so they know. So if they know, they should disclose. And we tried to do this last year and it was unsuccessful. We're trying to do it again because we think it's critically important that the buyer is aware. If the owner knows they have a lead service line, we think it's important to share. We're not requiring it to be replaced. It doesn't have to be replaced during the transaction. It's just kind of a, hey, it's lead. What do you want to do? If anything, if nothing, that's fine. We just want there to be disclosure.
Well, how are the disclosures being sent out? Because you can't actually tell where lead is, correct?
Well, we We know, so far, we know about 1,000 houses that we're confident do have lead service lines, and we've sent those letters to those people. And we're working on the rest of the service lines in the city. We think there are about 20,000, but we're only sure about 1,000. We're working on it. But the important fact here is that if you didn't get a letter that says you have a lead service line, then you don't know. You don't have to disclose.
And those, my understanding was there was two kinds of letters that went out. One that said you have it, and one that said you may have it.
Well, it said
We may have
unknown,
it.
we don't know.
Yeah, we
don't
may
know.
have it, but that means you don't know.
That's right.
But we wouldn't disclose that.
That's correct.
But,
Here,
sorry.
that one over here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Two things. One is I have reverse osmosis. Does this make this a null point? Is that a way to cure it? And then also the map that you have online.
Yeah.
Is there a way to, I put in addresses for people. So,
Yeah, the treatment thing is currently not allowed as a way to get out of lead service line replacement. You know, the EPA doesn't allow that. It will, RO, reverse osmosis, will remove lead from drinking water, and so it will make the drinking water safe, but it doesn't exempt you from replacement. Okay, according to the rules.
so
The map that's online, we have a search tool that's online that you can put an address in, and it will tell you if we think it's lead or if we don't know. That's based on our institutional knowledge. That's based on the methodology that EPA does not currently accept. But I think it's pretty darn good. I think it's a pretty good tool. If it says your line is lead, it's probably lead.
so blue square is okay.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, okay. That's different. We're okay still.
Oh,
That map that you're talking about, I
Yeah.
misunderstood your question.
oh,
But that map is driven by the inventory that we're doing. And it is, yeah, that's a good map.
so is that accurate? Like,
It is accurate. The red ones are lead and
it's pretty good.
I thought the blue ones were unknown.
No,
Gray is
blue
unknown,
is-
gray is
Gray is
unknown.
unknown.
Grace, I know, go to, just Google Des Moines Waterworks lead and that,
Google Des Moines Waterworks lead.
and you see this lovely blue, red, and gray scheme. You want to be blue, gray is they don't know, and red is you have lead. It's correct.
Yeah. And we're still working on it.
I know, but I mean, that's.
But that is the current data that we have right now.
Oh, our sellers are gonna want.
so,
Let's talk about the buyers.
Let's talk about why.
so I also want to talk about the cost. So let's say the average 10,000, 10,000 from the house to the stop box. We just had one from the stop box to the main was $5,800. And then we have the inside of the house that hasn't been changed. And then you're talking inside drywall, all of that. That's an enormous cost.
It is, but the lead copper rule has nothing to do with inside the house.
Okay.
And as far as the EPA is concerned, you can have all the lead you want inside your house.
I didn't know
They don't
that.
make a change. Yeah. And Brian can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but when we did the 87 replacements last year, the city plumbing department did not even look at anything else inside the house. We got them to agree, this is this, and we're not gonna worry about anything else, whether there's plumbing violations or
Doesn't
code
matter.
issues.
Yeah.
They are letting us just handle this
Okay.
and not looking at anything else in the house. We worked hard with the city and they came around for us. And so it could be whatever else you want, whatever else.
No, but that's huge because that would be an enormous cost added.
Yeah, I don't know. Have you seen lead in a house?
You mean to the house or?
No, inside.
No.
I haven't either. We don't see much lead in the house.
In drains. That's
Drains?
where I see
You'll see it, you'll see
The
it.
old drain
Yeah,
cans.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I have a question online first.
Okay.
Basically the question is, as an agent, can they call and find out for an address?
Yeah, I would call, and what I would recommend is that they ask if if they can provide the tap date. To me, that gives you the most information. We have a tap date for every house in Des Moines. Those are accurate. You can ask them to, or anyone can look at the map and see what information we have. If there's a red dot on that map, or there's squares actually, but they should have gotten a letter that says you have a lead service line. And if they're telling you they didn't get the letter, you can call us and we can tell you whether they got the letter. And the only ones that we are saying are lead are the ones that are red on that. We think it's lead if it was tapped before 1940. But the map that she was sharing earlier, that's the official record.
I know around a year ago, you guys were not. Has that changed at all in the last year? And is trying to you, are you able to determine the line, go out to do a sewer line? And you see the lead there, like, are you making mention? Is so kind of like two common questions. Are you making mention of it if you're digging?
Yes.
See that you are.
Yeah. So what I've been doing, Michelle Cole.
Hold on.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So what we do, so I relay everything to Michelle Cole, who works at Des Moines Waterworks. Yeah, if it's a job, any sewer, water, no matter what I'm doing, if we find lead, I've been related to her. So just for your guys'
But yeah, but we record that, but we don't do anything. We don't replace it. There aren't funds available to replace it, even though it's exposed and it would be great timing. They don't get replaced just because they get found.
You can also look up permits. When we were working with this recent house, we couldn't find anything through the waterworks. So we went and we did find something with permits on another house. So it's a lot of the investigation work, I think, especially for us as realtors to help our clients.
Right.
It's called Linehouse. I can't.
I'm not familiar with that.
It's through the city.
Show me my house.
Yeah, show me my house. And there's all these permits you can go to.
So
We
like
find it there.
if the service line had been replaced historically, that would be the,
Right.
yeah, I'm not familiar with that, but it sounds good.
Well, and keep in
That's
mind
really
that
helpful.
would be a homeowner's responsibility, a property owner's responsibility, because then we take on liability.
But if we're trying to prove
That's true.
Just quickly, if a homeowner does do the replacement, will they get a letter or do they need to notify you? Because I do have a client that knows and they did it. And I'm thinking, will they get a letter? How do we prove that they did it? Just a receipt that they replaced their line?
City of Des Moines it should have been,
Hold on.
it should have been inspected by the city of Des Moines.
Oh, they did.
And the city plumbing inspector will have all those on record.
And then it would be on record.
And that's on record, yeah.
Okay.
And we are trying to create a connection with city plumbing so that those would then come to us so we can update the map. Doesn't exist yet. But we'll-
Great, thanks.
One of the things I want to mention related to the disclosure and the legislation that we have introduced for disclosure. We are partnering with almost a dozen other communities around the state who have a lot of lead service lines on that legislation. We're trying to get this to be a statewide thing. And we've got a number of communities who have signed on to that and are helping us try to promote that idea in the legislature. We don't know if it will be successful this year or not. We hope to be. And stay tuned. Other questions? Right.
There you go.
So you've identified at least 2 neighborhoods and offered those neighborhoods free replacement.
Yes,
You had 86 take you up on that.
87, yeah.
So where's the funds that you didn't use?
Well, those funds were just excess revenue that we had from the year before because we had a dry year and sold a lot of water. So we're using those funds to fund the next round.
Okay. The next round being,
We're trying to do 500 this year. Got a $12 million loan from the state revolving fund that we're going to try to do 500 service lines this year. And so it'll be part of that.
okay. And do you have an inspection? How do you determine if their question is you may have? How
Yeah,
do you
well,
determine?
I will tell you that, first of all, we picked those 2 neighborhoods because all the census tracts were qualifying according to DNR's qualification process. And then we went into those neighborhoods and we just looked and we saw anybody who had a half-inch tap before 1940, we assumed that they had lead service line. And when we dug them up, 100% of them had lead service. So even though EPA doesn't accept that methodology, we look at the tap date, the size of the service. It's before 1940, it's half inch. We pretty well know that it's lead. And that's how we did it on the pilot.
Have you, or are you aware of any place that the drinking water had lead?
After we sent the letters, we sent 50,000 letters to people, and we had a lot of interest in lead testing. We've done 400, almost 500 tests now for lead in drinking water based on people getting those letters and having been concerned. And we found one that had meaningful lead and two that had very small traces out of 500. We offered to go out and help them find out exactly what was wrong, and we haven't heard back from them. But 2 or 3 out of 500 had some measurable amount of lead in the drinking water.
For your pilot program for this next year, is it going to be targeted to the same neighborhoods as it was before?
I don't know the answer to that yet. We're still trying to determine. We actually have a meeting with DNR next week. Brian and I was talking about that before we started here. We need to work out kind of a construction methodology with them before we decide exactly where we're going to go. So we don't know yet. But it has to be, because these are federal funds, not our excess revenue. It will have to be in qualifying census tracts.
Currently, the voicemail, when people call in for this line only, is really, really long because they have to put a lot of information in there. But it's very difficult to get a live voice and difficult to get a call back. Will the Waterworks be adding more people to answer questions since this is such an important thing? Will they be adding more people to those lines to take care of questions and also to call in the information that you asked for on the surveys?
Yeah, we're really, let's start with the survey, because that's your question. We're really hoping to get people to do the survey electronically because it's so much faster. And when people call in and they want to give the data, it takes a long time and slows down the process of answering questions. So we're really trying to push people to the online survey. As far as whether we're going to add people, we will see. We're not planning to add any. We don't have any ads to staff right now in the budget. But as we start ramping this process up, we're going to have to replace 2,000 to 3,000 service lines a year if we're going to get 20,000 replaced in 10 years. If that's the direction this goes, we will absolutely be adding staff just to administer it. We'll probably have to have multiple contracts going on at the same time. It'll be a huge project, but I don't see us adding any staff this year.
I know people are very frustrated about it. That's why, the only reason I bring it up. Are you hosting any meetings for something like this for residents so that they can come and ask questions?
Would you repeat the question?
Yeah, the question was, are we hosting meetings for residents so they can come and ask questions? And yes, when we went into Riverbend and King Irving, we hosted meetings there. They were very poorly attended, to be honest. We went to farmers markets, we went to the schools, we posted every single door in the entire neighborhood. We went door to door after hours with 5 people team. I mean, we did everything we could. And got 87. And they were free. We're giving them away. So we're going to have to work on the communications plan. We're going to have to do a lot of different things. This is our communications person. She has the microphone now.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that once we have those neighborhoods identified for replacements this year, of course, we'll be having public meetings. Anyone could probably join in on that. I think it's really important that we have them both in person as well as virtual options. So that's something that we'll do. I also always want to encourage folks to email us through the lead line. I help answer those emails and we get back to people within a day, max 20 or 48 hours, probably. So email is always going to be a fastest response than calling. Also, sometimes that does need research. And so if we have all of that in writing, what you need to know, it's faster for someone to research it and then get back an answer than just calling and leaving a voicemail.
We've also done a number of neighborhood association meetings. Anybody who asks us, anyone who let us come and talk.
One of the things inside the bill that you have joined with other places to put into the state house,
Yes.
inside that bill, are you requesting that there's funding of some sort provided by the state?
We did request $5 million a year for 10 years, which is only $15 million. But my perspective is that the state has just ignored that part of the request, and they're moving forward with the disclosure piece. I mean, it's gone to committee, and but we haven't even gotten anyone to sign on to introducing a bill for us on the funding side.
My fear with that is that without funding, we are putting a huge burden on people that have this, which is likely to be people with lesser incomes than the people that live in houses built after 76. So that's a huge concern.
And I do understand. I just fear that we're just transferring that burden to the buyer if we don't disclose.
There's money that has to be spent. Where's it coming from?
It's a good question.
So for those homes that are in the may or may not have, the best option a seller could do to relieve a buyer of any stress with that is to one, check at the water meter, and then call Torgerson and say, hey, dig up by the stop box, see if it's there, and that maybe give the buyer a better confidence that it is not lead. Or
it's easy to look where the water source line comes into the house, and it's copper. It's copper. You can see how it goes. I personally think it's also it can be pretty successful just figuring out when the connection was made to the water system. If it was, after 1950, I personally wouldn't worry.
Yeah, because I mean, their records are going to tell you a lot more. Because even if you do have to get the stop box, a lot of times they've been extended. New service been put in from the house to that stop box. So the old curb stop was at the curb. They had to bring it up close to the sidewalk. So even if you dig down at the curb stop, you'll see copper, but there's still going to be a lead back by the curb where the coupling on. So they're like Ted said, their records are going to tell you rather than paying someone like me. As much as I look at it.
So basically, my house is like 120 years old. So if, let's say I did not ever dig out to my line, I would probably still have a old pipe. The only way an old house would have copper coming into the house is if they did something or since 1950, correct?
Yes.
Just at the office about that. Okay. So I'm surprised.
Well, you're not, you would be surprised.
No,
at
I
what
know,
you'll
but I
find
mean,
in
all
the
the houses are.
Right, but in the ones that we've looked at, I'm surprised at what I find in terms of permits, or also we've been calling around, talking to excavation people to see are people on that list, because a lot of our sellers, they don't know, especially if it's someone elderly, they're not getting online and checking, they don't even know where to go to look at the permit. So we've been helping them. I'm liable, I guess, but we help with a lot of things. So I can get online and look at it. It's their job, yes, but I think we all know we're going to be helping them. That's just.
If you go down and look at the basement where your water meter is, look at the pipe that comes in. They won't be copper. I don't know how long you lived there, but not 120 years. Something could have happened before you moved in. They could have replaced it.
Right.
They replaced it. So don't just assume you're screwed.
I know, I'm just thinking of all the clients I have coming up that have burial houses. And
Well, the burial houses are much more likely to have that service line.
Other questions?
Sorry, everybody. This is Ethan with Quick Plumbing, and he's a master plumber, and he deals with a lot of interior stuff.
Inside,
He's been great to work with. And not to plug Ethan, but he may be able to speak to how much he sees in terms of lead inside homes. In and out of homes all the time.
And apparently we found out that doesn't matter.
Right, well, but I'm just saying,
Doesn't care.
So very, very rarely, like I've been doing it since 2008. I've probably seen one house with lead inside that wasn't connected to the service. And even that, I'm pretty sure that house had a new service brought in and they just left that portion inside. But it's also one of those things like every solder joint in your house before 1986 was soldered with 50/50 solder. And so there's always going to be lead content inside. Every cast iron, every grain line, it's 3-inch cast iron, there's 3 pounds of lead in it. So in each joint. So there's always existing lead in there, but on the drain side, it doesn't connect to your drinking water, it doesn't hurt anything. As long as you're not letting it, eating it, it's fine.
Like lead-based paint.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, lead-based paint was, it's fine as long as it's not around a window where it's getting disturbed and stuff like that. So it's not a scary thing. In fact, lead shower pans, they last way longer than the new shower pans. It's not anything to be afraid of, but also not good if you eat it. So.
So I do have a question. Has the disclosure discussion happened with the EPA when we mentioned lead-based paint? Why is the disclosure piece not coming through the EPA like the lead-based paint disclosure?
Good question. We haven't had a specific discussion with EPA on that. EPA hasn't given a ton of guidance on how to get this done, just that it needs to be done. We really haven't been part of the how discussions, so no. For those of you in the room, if you've never seen a lead service line or galvanized service line, that's what this is. This is an old stop box. The valve has been near the sidewalk and now this is the lead pipe. And we're talking about lead service line, half-inch lead, half-inch galvanized that went on in the house. It's interesting to note if you look at this pipe that came out of property in Des Moines, if you look inside, there's an eggshell coating on the inside of that pipe that was deposited there by the water that we produce because of the water chemistry. Do that intentionally to protect the line against corrosion and to help ensure that we don't have lead in our drinking water. You can see it really clearly in this pipe when it's used. You can see why we do not have lead in drinking water, even though we do have lead in restrictions. So
We do have an online question. Is there going to be help through home serve like sewer?
Well, we have a home serve program for water. You're probably all aware of that. But the home serve contracts across the country specifically exclude regulatory changes or regulatory requirements. So even though there is now this requirement that lead be replaced, they're not required to do that for the normal. We did talk to home serve about including not just wholesale replacement, but complete replacement of any lead service line if it leaked or had to be repaired for any other reason. And that was going to about double the cost to the customer for the monthly home serve bill. So we decided not to do that. And we decided not to do that because only about 20 to 25% of our customers have lead service lines. And so just not sure it's equitable to have the other 75 or 80% of the customers pay double, nor do we think it's equitable for them to pay 30% more in their rates. That's where we are today. So no is the short answer.
Any other questions? It makes sense.
So this is just more on a high level, I guess. I don't know if you know these numbers, but what is like the total cost around the country to replace lead pipes? And then in the infrastructure bill that was passed a couple of years ago, there was money put aside for that. Is that what you're talking about with the federal funds?
It is what I'm talking about. How much money is available? How many service lines are there? I don't know the numbers, but the one number that I have heard that I think is fairly accurate is that the funding that has been made available is 20 to 25% of what it replace all the lead service lines. And we're seeing that here in Iowa too. What has been allocated from the BIL, the bipartisan infrastructure law, which is where the web service on money came from. It's 20 to 25% of what it would take to replace the 50 to 100,000 web service lines that exist in Iowa. So it's woefully inadequate.
Yeah, because I think it was 50 billion that was allocated from that infrastructure bill for lead lines. So if that's only 20 or 25%.
In Iowa, it was 164 million. It was given from the federal government, but it's anticipated the cost statewide is 500 million.
All right, with that, there's going to be a lot more updates. I mean, just keep your ears open, learn all you can. That's the best thing that we can always do. We'll keep you up to date as much as we can through our school as well. And we want to thank our presenters today.